Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen. If you have any problems seeing anything or hearing, just let me know. I'm delighted that you can join me this evening on a windy Thursday evening to listen to our information about the Globe Air Quality Campaign. I hope it will be informative, but also informal. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. You can just ask away, or you can type it in the chat box. If you prefer to raise your hand first, that's fine with me. Anything at all, from the practical side to just ideas around, sharing information with your class, just ask away. Okay, so I wanted to tell you a little bit about the GLOBE program because it's not a very big program in Ireland yet. So I'll talk a tiny bit about that. We'll talk about the air quality campaign and how it fits into the GLOBE program. We'll talk a little bit about nitrogen dioxide, the pollutant that we're going to be measuring. I'll just explain what's going to arrive in your air quality pack when you receive it. We'll talk about some activities you can do with your class. And I know we have primary school and secondary school teachers here, so I think I'll keep it fairly broad, but I think most of the activities would actually be suitable for all ages. And then we're going to talk about the results, what kind of results you're going to get, and what you can do in the class around raising awareness of air pollution. Okay, just to kick it off, so the GLOBE program. The GLOBE program was, it's a NASA-sponsored international science and education program. It stands for Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment. We launched it in Ireland in 2017. The first air quality campaign was in 2019. And I think there were about 25 schools participating in that very first campaign. We're sponsored by the EPA, so we mainly work with the EPA citizen science team, and we also work quite closely with the EPA air quality team. So GLOBE itself, there's over 140 countries that take part in GLOBE. So there's a real focus there on citizen science, both at schools and then amongst the general public. I'd recommend you all to take a look at the GLOBE site. I know I have some links there in some of the resources I sent you. There's some great resources for implementing measurement campaigns in the classroom and around the school, of course, outside. The best part is that the information that the students are recording are actually needed by NASA. So I guess the reason why, NASA kind of set this program up was, in addition to just their outreach, they also wanted to get ground truthed measurements for their satellite observations. So for instance, if they have a satellite that's measuring, let's say the height of glaciers or tree height on the ground, they can actually get people to go and measure the height of those trees, or they get other scientists to go and look at the glaciers on the ground, and then they can validate those measurements that the satellites are taking. So it's a really nice way, I think, for the students to understand that they can actually participate in science. It's real science, and the data is actually that they gather is actually meaningful. It has a use. So we try to carry on that same theme with what we're doing here in GLOBE Ireland. We actually want the students to be able to gather data that's useful, and the EPA air quality team and the greater EPA team are, find this information very useful, and they actually use it. So it's a really nice aspect of the program. Okay, so like I said, and that you all probably know at this point, it's a school-based traffic-related air pollution study. And the students are going to be measuring nitrogen dioxide. So that's one of the traffic-related pollutants, the other one being particulate matter. So they're the main two traffic-related pollutants. The EPA, all this information that we gather, so all the data that we gather, we send to the EPA. And from their perspective, they have their own monitoring stations. They're kind of high-end monitoring stations all over the country. But with nitrogen dioxide, it's so variable, in space and time. A gust of wind can disperse NO2 quite quickly. So only tens of meters away from the source, you can get quite different measurements. So you can imagine, for them to really try and characterize the pollution level would be quite difficult. They'd need, thousands of monitoring stations across the whole country. So, by sending these monitoring tubes out to the schools, we're actually collecting data that the EPA needs and wants to support their own studies. And the other aspect of this is that, it's supposed to be easy to follow. So in addition to the tubes that we use being accurate, we hope that, the campaign can be run successfully and that we have good confidence in the data. So classic kind of citizen science work. Okay, so what is nitrogen dioxide? So when you're working through this with the students, like the first thing that we tend to talk about is just cars in general, and what kind of out of the vehicle exhaust, like what do we get? So there's water vapor coming out, there's particulate matter that I mentioned, but there's also nitrogen dioxide, which is a pollutant gas. And I think most of the students kind of get that feel, like they know that when they're walking by cars, especially in the winter, they'll see that big cloud of water vapor, and it kind of has a smell to it, and they're kind of used to that. So just getting that in their heads, I think, is at the beginning is kind of, it sets the stage. Like I said, the highest level is close to the busy roads, and particularly where you have a lot of cars idling. So you can imagine like at a traffic light, or just any slow moving traffic, or even like at pickup and drop off times when the cars are idling, waiting to get in and out of the school. Like that's really, where you see those high levels of NO2. It's nitrogen oxide that comes out of the exhaust, but then when it combines with the oxygen in the air, then it becomes nitrogen dioxide. So, I guess some other classes, if they're a little bit older and you want to get into more chemistry, you can go down that road too. Nitrogen dioxide is a greenhouse gas. So I always mention that just because, you can tie it into other things. Then you can talk about carbon dioxide and methane, but nitrogen dioxide is also another greenhouse gas. And the main thing to get across really is that it's harmful to our health. Now, this is a thing that's been kind of evolving and changing over the years, because there used to be more of a focus, on those peaks of NO2 when you'd see, really high levels. And maybe, you could correlate that with asthma attacks or people like noticeably having like watering eyes or coughing. But now, like with more research that has gone on, they're figuring out that actually even lower levels of nitrogen dioxide, like if you're exposed to it over a longer time period, so maybe you wouldn't be as aware, of that or in the air around you, but there's enough of a kind of a background level that it can have more of a chronic effect on your health. So in response to that and the latest research, the WHO, the World Health Organization, has actually lowered their guidelines. So the EU is still relatively high, but the WHO just lowered their guidelines. And, now when we look at those annual mean guidelines, compared to what we're measuring at schools and what we have been measuring over the last, 3 years, sorry, just admitting some there, we see that like actually around schools, particularly at the school gate, like we're actually getting results kind of above what the WHO have sort of recommended. Now, just to point out, that's on a 12-month basis. So like for us, we're putting up our tubes, usually they're up for a month. So you could argue then, like maybe we're measuring the worst of it, like in the winter, and that may, when there's less traffic, there wouldn't be as much pollution. But I think, it's good to just keep it in mind that like there really is no safe level of pollution. So I suppose, to deliver that in an age appropriate way, obviously with the students, but like just thinking to them, like this is a real opportunity because they're the ones that are measuring this, and, that they can actually feed this information back to the school community. And hopefully, you just hope that it might have some good effect on your mobility around the school, and maybe convince a few folk to scoot or walk to school or whatever. But I think like in general, don't be afraid to advertise that you're doing this ahead of time and say, listen, I know some schools have said things in the newsletter, like just to say we're measuring traffic related pollution at the school and over the next month, and because I think it gets it in people's heads. And then, of course, when the students have, done their work and the results are back, then you can do more of the posters and anti-idling campaigns and all that. Um, okay, so right now the air quality packs are being assembled. So I just wanted to show you really quick what was in them. There's not many too many surprises there, but anyway, you get 3 plastic tubes. So you can see the picture of the tube there. And there's 2 caps on the tube, and you'll see a little sticker on the side. It's got a QR code and a 7-digit number. So the thing is, they're plastic tubes and they're fairly durable, to be honest. The most important thing is that gray cap at the top. There's a mesh in there, and there's kind of a reagent on the mesh, and that's where the nitrogen dioxide accumulates. So you just have to make sure when you put the tubes up that you take that bottom cap off, and that allows the air then to get in and diffuse up the tube, and then any of the NO2 will sort of precipitate or get left over onto that mesh. And then when we send that to the lab, then they have a look at the mesh and then work out how much NO2 was in the air for that period that the cap was off. So the important thing then is just once that cap is off, the experiment is started, and then the cap's back on again at the end, and the experiment's over. In terms of mounting them, I'll just show you a picture now in a minute, but they'll come with these little black plastic hanger. Apologies for all the plastic though. We're well aware of that, but we haven't come up with a good solution for it yet. But so yeah, there's these black hangers. So I'll show you how to use them now in a second. And you'll get some zip ties. They're kind of long zip ties. So, if you have a lamppost or something like that, you want to put it all the way around to attach the tube, you could do that. Full instructions will be in the pack as well. And you'll also find an envelope in the envelope. And that envelope is so at the end, when you put your caps back on, you can stick your tubes back into that envelope, and it's pre-stamped and pre-addressed and everything. So it's just a matter really of putting them in straight into the post. So I just want to show you what it looks like when it's mounted, just in case this is the first time you've done the campaign. So the best thing to do, although the picture is showing the tube in there, so the tube goes in last, so keep that till the very end. The first thing to see is there is actually a little sticky tab on the back of that clip. See where the holder arrow is. At the very back of that, the part that's against the lamppost is sticky. So you can wipe, if it's a lamppost, give it a bit of a wipe first of all, and then stick that on. And then you can run the zip tie all the way around, and you can see where the zip tie then goes in through the back of that clip. So that's fairly straightforward, really. And you can tighten it a good bit, and it should be fairly secure. We don't usually have too many problems with it. Then what you want to do is just carefully put the tube in, and then at the very last part, then just take that lid, that bottom kind of cap off, and then your experiment has begun. At the same time, I just want you to note down the number. There's a number just there below the QR code. So just to note down that number and then the location of your tube. And this is part mostly for yourself. The numbers for us and the exposure, how much time the tube is up is for us, but just for yourselves and part of the study to remember exactly where you put the tube, when you're looking at it later. And if you take part in more campaigns, it's always nice to know. So if you didn't have a round thing like a lamppost, or you could even put it like on a rectangular, one of a gate, the top of a gate post or something. But you could just use the sticky part. Some people have used the sticky part without the zip tie. Now, I think I've heard mixed results about that. I think you'd want a very clean surface for that to stick properly. You'd almost want to wipe it down beforehand and really hold it on for 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And I think as well, if it's in a place where it's really windy and wet or anything like that, they could fall down. So really the best thing is to find something round and use that zip tie then to secure it. I don't know if there's any questions at this point, just in case anyone's any practical questions on that. No, just interrupt me at any time, because sometimes I forget to say the important things. Okay, so really the air quality campaign, the main part is putting up the tubes and taking down the tubes. But as you can see, it is fairly simple. So we really want to raise awareness around air pollution as well at the same time. It's a great opportunity to do that. So we'd recommend sort of the beginning stages around now, and I know it's midterm next week, but If there's any time next week, if you're only off for a couple of days, you could do it then, or even that first week when you come back, is to really explore the topic of air pollution with the students. And we do have, there is like a primary school PowerPoint presentation you could use and a secondary school PowerPoint presentation. And the links to those are in the newsletter, that first newsletter. If you have a problem finding them, though, just give me a shout. You can email me and I can email you the PowerPoints. So yeah, at this point, it's exploring the topic. And then like to get the students really involved, like we would recommend that they are the ones that, you know, help plan the whole thing. So for instance, saying to them, listen, we're getting 3 tubes, we're going to be looking at a traffic related pollutant and, you know, all of that. But like, where do you think we should put the tubes? So like we would suggest, you know, that they kind of get involved in that. And I'll show you, I have some ideas around that, and I'm sure you have plenty of ideas too, but it's just nice to get their buy-in, you know, at this point. And then while the tubes are up, like once they're up, they're up. You don't really have to do anything except go and look occasionally just to make sure they're still there. Or like sometimes they, you know, they get knocked off or taken. Occasionally they get taken, unfortunately. But so yeah, it's worth just kind of keeping an eye on them. But while they're up, then there's information you can gather at the same time to help support the whole study and to, you know, get the students into thinking more about pollution and things that affect it. And then the final stage then would be more the results, and you're looking at your numbers and you're comparing it to other schools' numbers. And then you're really thinking about like, how do I, you know, communicate this back to the school? So there's all these different phases, but it's like a whole kind of 8 to 10 week thing. So in terms of exploring the topic, like I won't go on about this because I know it's totally up to what age group you have. And, you know, with they've got some couple of ideas like around like if you're kind of dealing with some older students, you can focus more on biology and respiratory system, lungs and everything. You can talk about what clean air means, like why do we want clean air? You talk about like sustainability and urbanization. I mean, there's so many ideas. The younger folk as well, like for active travel, like that's really comes up in green schools a lot. So I think it really kind of blends in with that whole green schools ethos as well. So that's kind of nice to bring up that. And like I said, chemistry, if you want. Health, I mean, we've talked about health so much, I suppose, in the last 2 years, and we've talked about, like, as a society, how to deal with people that are more vulnerable to issues like air pollution. So I think it is an interesting concept, and especially if you've more time to delve into it, like with TY groups. And then sustainable development goals, like there's so many links there, nice opportunity just to sort of make those connections, you know, with what the students are sort of already familiar with. Okay, so let's explore the topic. That next stage was the investigation. So when you're planning for all of this, like if you had time to do this now the next week or two, I know it's midterm, so it's, you know, a bit late, but I'd really suggest that the students just make a map of their local area, like just the school and the couple of roads like close to it. So it could be a hand-drawn map, just like I've shown there. And this was from a TY student in a Dublin school, but like it could be a hand-drawn map, or it could be something they did on the computer, or you could even just, like, I mean, there's loads of ideas, and you know yourself, you could print out aerial photographs, or you could use the SkullNet maps, or like, you know, just whatever works for you, obviously in your class. But the main idea would be for them to think about like where to place the tubes, but they have to keep in mind a couple of things. Like I'd mark on the maps the general prevailing wind direction, because if they're like occasionally you can get kind of spurious results, but then you look at you take a step back and say, oh yeah, there's a massive road, like a major road, like, you know, just a little bit away from the school, but with the prevailing winds, you're actually getting NO2 brought in the air. So just think about that, even like a little arrow in the map to mark that wind direction. And then obviously like a proper scale and a north arrow, and they can kind of mark out like different areas, like where they play and where yard is, you know, the entrance into the school, and just to get them thinking. And anyway, just to create a map anyway, because it's good kind of skill building. And then they could go out and walk the area, like while they're choosing where to place the tubes. You know, that might not be a bad idea, although with the weather the way it is these days, might not quite make it outside. Right, so gathering information. So the thing is for this, like, we have schools that do everything, like schools that like just go put the tubes up take them down, results go back, no problem. And that's perfect. And then like we have schools that really introduce it more to the students and sort of form a whole, module around it. And that's brilliant too. It's just that like you kind of have to do what suits you and what suits your kind of group and whatnot. But I think if you're going to do one thing, I suppose, I would really recommend a traffic count survey. I think it's just like, when they go out and they're there and they're actually counting the cars and they can see, like sometimes you can see the pollution and they're thinking in their minds, they're really making that connection between the car and all the vehicles and air pollution. So that can be quite powerful. And then of course, when they get their results, they can say, oh yeah, that tube, I got that value for, and that was the spot that we counted this many cars in. So it sort of brings it all a bit clearer into their minds. The other things is the weather monitoring. Like there's so much on Globe in terms of weather monitoring. Some of it's quite detailed, so you might not have time for that. But even just saying to the students that, like, obviously wind is a big disperser, especially because it's a gas, like, so it can get dispersed very easily on a windy day. And then rain as well, particularly when it comes to particulate matter that comes out of the exhaust as well. If there's heavy rain, that just gets washed right down to the ground. So you should see, like, if we did this, different times, the year, but with the same amount of cars but different weather conditions, you should be able to pull out the effect of the weather. And then also just to mention to them, like, the difference between, a school on top of a hill. Again, there's loads of ventilation. It's very windy. The pollution's just going to disappear fairly quickly. As opposed to like a school that's in a valley, or a school even that's in like Dublin City, Cork City, one of the cities where it's quite built up, you can get very poor ventilation along those streets. So you'll see, like, we've seen quite high results from schools on city streets, and has, like, they call it a street canyon effect. So yeah, the main thing I'd recommend there is really the traffic count survey. Okay, so what are you going to get in the end? So you'll have your 3 tubes, you'll have sent them back to us in the envelope provided. And then we send them off to the lab where they look at that mesh in the top cap of the tube, and then they work out the NO2 concentration using that period, that exposure period. So we'll tell them, like, this tube is up for, 4 weeks and 1 day or whatever it was. So that what they send back to us is you get an average value for each of those tubes. So you should have 3 values NO2. And if you had them in different places, like, you should have one that's high, like the one that maybe you put in the front gate, near the road, and then a car park one maybe, and one in the back. Now, you don't have to do this, but this is just kind of, what we suggest. So you should see 3 values. And then what we do then, so we share the results with you. Everyone will get an email with the results, but you'll also be able to see all the schools that are taking part in the campaign. So like all 155 schools will have results. So you'll be able to see them. And the EPA create a nice map for us, so you can see that there where it says October 2021 results. So like every dot that you see there is a school that participated in October. And then, so like the color correlates with their NO2 level. So you can see the blues, they're all low, like they're 0 to 10 micrograms per cubic meter. So this is just their highest value. Now we only put up like their highest value in this map. But you can see, like, most of the rural schools they have quite low levels of NO2, which is fantastic. But then it's also surprising because you get schools in the Midlands and, Southwest, anywhere really, I suppose, that are along a road. And then you see the NO2 jump up to like above 10 and into the 20s even. And then, of course, as you get closer to the cities, it can go up even into the 40s. And I mentioned at the beginning just about the WHO mean annual level, and they're trying to keep NO2 below 10. That's all the blue dots. So everything that's not a blue dot, if this was an annual, if we'd left the diffusion tubes up for 12 months, they'd all be above. So green, yellow, orange are all above what's recommended. So which is kind of a little bit startling, but nonetheless, we always aim high to try and reduce these things and do our best. So yeah, so like I said, on the left there's a graph, and we see this trend of increasing NO2 as you go towards the cities. But then of course you always get like some small town that's like right on the end, whatever, and you just get much higher values for that. So I don't want to keep you too long because I want to give a chance just in case anyone has any questions. But when it comes to the results, like we just really encourage the students to get engaged at that point. And I mean, we see that all the time, and it's lovely. Like we're just going through our submissions from our last campaign, and there's great stuff like posters and graphs and science research projects and people submitting stuff to like the ESB Blast and the BT Young Scientist and even Globe conferences. So it's really fantastic. So I can encourage you all, you know, if you can, and if there's time in the class to spend on this, to try and integrate it somehow and encourage the students to think about their results and use any of the resources you know that are out there. And we always have a prize draw. We had a school last year won a Davis weather station. So it's just it's based on like if you just hand in anything, you could hand in like 4 posters and then the research report, and they're all entered into the prize draw. And it's just then we just do kind of a lucky dip then out of it. So it's not based on the standard. So primary school, secondary school, it's open to everyone. And I think that's mostly all I have there. Sorry for I kind of raced through it, I know, but I suppose like I'm just thinking it's Thursday night and everyone's kind of had enough of the day. But I'm just wondering though if anyone has any questions or if I can help with anything, or I suppose if there's anything practical that you have in mind that you'd like to do with your class or anything.
Good evening, Aileen. Thanks very much for the presentation. All very interesting. I'm a secondary school teacher. I'm just wondering, do we receive 1 tube, is it? Or do we get 2? Like you were saying, you pick your spot. Would you mention 3?
Yeah, so you'll get 3 tubes
Okay.
in the post, yeah.
And on the first delivery, we get 3 tubes.
Yeah, exactly. That one packet will have the 3 tubes and then your instructions, and then that and the little kind of plastic kind of mounting devices and everything. And yeah, so it's the kind of pack though, you know, it sounds like it's going to be big, but like it often still goes missing in the office, you know, that way. Classic. Okay. Like it ends up in someone else's pigeonhole, or you know. So yeah, no, yeah. So that's okay. All 3 tubes are the main thing. Yeah. So
on the first day, the first tube goes out, and then what happens to the other 2? We hold on to them until certain dates, is it?
No, you can put them all up together. And like perfect. The thing is, yeah, they all go
different locations.
Time, different locations, yeah.
Gotcha. Thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem. And I should say, like I have written there, like we try to all measure it at the same time, like the I think it's March 3rd to March 31st this year. And I appreciate that, like, it's really hard to do that. I think it's almost a little bit easier in primary school, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, because at least you can kind of plan your day a bit better. But if you only see the TYs and you're doing it with TYs and you only see them like on Tuesdays at whatever time, like do it on the Tuesday before, or just, you know, try your best. It's the idea there would be more that like we can share the information with EPA and say everyone measured it roughly in the same period, so you can rule out other factors. And, you know, and I see a question there. Reading and the secret. Yeah, so as soon as you get them, they keep better in the fridge. So if you could put them in the fridge, like if you get them like on the Monday and you are waiting until the Thursday, if you could just stick them in the fridge, that would be fantastic. And then at the end, like if you can't post them immediately, if you could put them in the fridge, like there's nothing harmful in there, so no one has to worry, you know, it's other staff members get weird tubes in the fridge, they're all fine. Okay, so just the question on the height above ground. So like it's really interesting because like, you know, like the exhaust from the cars are low down, right? So if we were to do a study now and we put the tubes all at different levels, we'd probably see the lower down tubes measure higher NO2. So that's an interesting one in itself. You see the younger junior, senior infants coming in primary school and they're tiny, you know, they're probably right at that height. But the big problem there, and I know you're probably guessing what I'm going to say, is that people actually steal the tubes occasionally. So for that purpose, we say 2 to 4 meters, you know, if you can. I don't want anyone to get hurt on a ladder or climbing. So I think just use your judgment, I suppose, is the main thing. Like, you know, I think if they're out the front and they look very appealing, someone might try and grab them. So it's just something to keep in mind. And I hate saying that, but you know the way it is. Hope I answered that question, Catherine, for you enough. Let me see. Okay, so someone's just asking if they can put the tubes up around the local area. Like, do they need to be around the school? Okay, so that's a really good question. We recommend right at the school, because if you're doing the project and you sort of have ownership over them, and then the results will relate back to your school. Now, I don't have like GPS data, obviously, of where these tubes are. So anyway, I would say, listen, if they're not right at the school, maybe there's a road that the students are all walking near, and, you kind of would really like to capture that. And there's a good lamppost that you spotted. Go for it. I think, just keep a note of where it is. I think if you're going to do a very remote area, like if someone's mentioned just by a lake, you would get really low values of NO2. So you kind of wonder, like, unless it's an area that students are using or there's some reason behind it, I might stay clear of that one. But like, I'm just saying that, like, we want to try and keep it to as close as we can to the schools. Just when we write the whole thing up and we're sending to the EPA, it sort of makes sense for people to be doing similar things. When should we expect the tubes to arrive? Yeah, see, this is the big question for me, and I've never quite, been able to fully, understand this. We send the tubes out, like, they'll go out end of next week, and some schools will get them like almost, it feels like the same day or the next day, and then other schools don't seem to get them for about a week. So I think if you're checking your post box from like Monday, what's that, the 28th, I'd recommend just keeping an eye from them and just let me know if they don't arrive. I mean, there's not too much I can do about it, to be honest, but I can just make sure that the logistics company like sent them out. I'll have a record of that, so at least I can verify that. Don't panic if they don't come like on the 3rd. Let's say you're still waiting and it's Thursday and they've been in the post for a week. Don't panic. As soon as they come, if you could just put them up, that'd be great. Is it too late for schools to apply now? It is, yeah, but we'll be having another campaign. The EPA are great and they're really interested in this data. So we'll hopefully have another one in the autumn time, get more funding, hopefully. Sharing with local media. Okay, so we've done this before. We have schools that have written their own press releases. And if you have something that you'd like, me to look at, or something that you'd like me to contribute to, just email me. We always just like to mention our sponsor, just saying, is there any press info you wish to be shared? There's two things I always mention, that EPA are our sponsors and we're part of the GLOBE program. So that makes sense. But listen, don't just like, if you have any questions, just email me, or I think my phone number is there in one of the newsletters too. And it's no problem at all. And even if there's just practical questions on the day when you're just putting the tubes up and have a moment of, is this going to work? Feel free to give me a shout. And I just hope it's enjoyable for the students. And I hope, I hope they can kind of spread the message, tell their parents, tell my own kids to tell me not to drive short journeys, right? Isn't that what we're all trying to do? Okay, I don't know if there's any more questions at this point. I know it's after 8 o'clock and everyone wants to go. Anything else? I think so. Well, in that case, keep an eye out for your tubes. They should be there after midterm. And yeah, have a good time. And any questions, just fire off an email. Thanks a million, everyone, and good luck.
Great.
Hope it goes well.
Great. Thanks very much, Aileen. Take care. Bye.
Welcome. Bye.
Well done.
Oh, thanks.
Night night. Good night.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.